Welcome to the show, everyone. Today's guest is Jay Stamatelos. Struck by the events of 9/11, which took place when Jay was 15 years old, he was convinced stopping radicalization and violence was the best way to help his community. After earning multiple degrees, he went on to work for the city of Pittsburgh Office of Emergency Management and Homeland Security and Region 13 Counter-Terrorism Fusion Center. As an emergency management specialist, Jay routinely deployed with Pittsburgh SWAT to barricaded suspects and hostage situations, responded to major natural disasters, trained citizen responders, and authored the I knew I was going to stumble on this word, operationalization of Pittsburgh's evacuation plan. One extra syllable in there. Due to a mix of chronic stress and endless self-loathing, Jay hit a rock bottom that nearly cost him his life in December of 2010. Luckily, he was fortunate to be surrounded by great people who taught him how to repair his relationship with himself. This event and the way others engaged with him changed Jay's life. As he began to heal and reconnect with others, Jay realized that virtually everyone around him was going through some version of the same problem: constant self-criticism, a deep sense of worthlessness, and hiding truth from others in shame. If he wanted to help, he needed to learn why this was happening and how he could really fix it. I'm excited to have Jay on the show today to share how he helps men replace chronic insecurity and shame with a sense of internal peace and grounded confidence. And with that, Jay Stamatelos, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Eric. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great to have you here, my friend. I'm honored as always that you're willing to share your time and your story with our listeners. It's a fantastic thing that you do, and so thrilled to get into it and hear what you've got to share. So, with that, let's talk about childhood. What was it like growing up? Where did you grow up in Pittsburgh?
I was born in Monroeville, but I grew up in McKeesport, which is a smaller city outside of Pittsburgh, down to the southeast, and been in the Pittsburgh metro area. Grew up there until I was in third grade. Then we moved up north to Zelienople, which was very different. And that was like kind of moving from urban to the country, and a big shift there. Totally different people, totally different way of living, but a lot of woods, a lot of trees. That was a huge benefit. Love that. Me and my friend Levi, my neighbor, we spent, so many summer days out playing in the creek in the back. It was great. So
awesome.
Grew up in a dual faith Roman Catholic and Greek Orthodox church because neither of my parents would switch. And that was something that had a big impact on my life because I went to Catholic school the entire time up through actually the end of college. And even though during that time I became an agnostic atheist, I got really angry at the church. I kind of got angry at man. So I threw out God. That whole thing came back, and having a spiritual experience was part of that whole healing journey that you just described there. I don't know if we'll get into that today, but childhood really was we were a small family, a tight family. I would say for me personally, there was a lot of pressure in the household. So a lot of people who have this background of being highly self-critical, of having high shame, come from a background like that, where you do have a lot of experience of, am I achieving enough, or is my performance high enough in order to get love, to feel like I belong, to have acceptance? And that was part of my experience as well. So,
is that from family or from friends, coaches? What was that?
Primarily family. I mean, we always went to decent schools and high pressure schools. I had a friend regarding high school who asked us, because we went to a private high school together. She asked, "Where in your house did you cry from school?" So not did you cry? That was assumed. It was where did you go? And she just brought it up, as we were all sitting around talking one day, and everyone had an answer. So that did happen, but family was a big part of it. And that was a tradition in the family. There is a tradition in the family of competition within the family, of cousins versus cousins. My dad was part of that. He tried to get out of it as much as he could. But that's something I have a lot of lived experience with.
So was your family a big family, or how many siblings?
My older sister was severely mentally handicapped because of malpractice during childbirth. So while she kind of got stuck while she was being born. The doctor used forceps, put the clamps on her brain instead of on her jaw. And it was an illegal procedure. And the sad part is he was my mom's friend. But that caused her to have a seizure during birth. That led to her. She's still with us. She's great. She's lots of fun, but she has, for a lot of her life, she had a mental capacity of about a 1.5-year-old. And now she's about like a 3.5-year-old, which actually is a huge improvement. But her name's Kristen. She's great. And I have another brother, Michael, who's younger than me. So it's the three of us plus my two parents. And that's been kind of us as a nucleus because we were always, well, once we left McKeesport, we were physically far away from most of our other families. So I'd see the rest of my family maybe a couple times a year max.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But you mentioned, so you mentioned the cousins, right? So I come from a big Italian family, and your Greek family. Was the family predominantly all Greek, or was there any kind of blend in there of?
Well, my dad is the first Greek in his community, was one of the first Greeks in his community to marry a non-Greek, and not just that, but a blonde Polish girl.
Oh,
So, and that led to huge issues in the family, like his mother and being pushed out, kind of exiled within his own family. My mom was mistreated as well. And that, kind of inspired us to also be on our own, doing our own thing. And so I actually don't have any first cousins, which is rare for a Greek. My dad has a lot of cousins, but I grew up very much, this is our house, this is our family. We didn't have the big extended family that most Greek Americans do.
Okay. Yeah, I was curious if there was I'm trying to get a picture if you had like the big family gatherings with the heated, because I know Greek and Italian similar, a little bit of get a little emotional in there, little tempers can go. I know our family certainly had our share of heated moments in our past and things like that. But you didn't have that kind of growing up, the big.
No, that was never a big part of it. But I do think that there was. And I love my parents. I'm very grateful for them. But I do think this added another layer of pressure because we need to show that our marriage works, right? That our kids are high quality, that it doesn't matter if they're only half Greek. Look what they can do. And at least that was something I perceived. I don't want to name anything, but I don't know. We're not really close to my dad's family. There's one or two cousins who I feel close to, but otherwise, unfortunately, it's a group of people who I'm not too excited about reaching out to for help, which makes me sad.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Were you, as a kid, were you a sporty kid? You play sports, or you mentioned kind of playing out in the woods and stuff like that. What else did you do? Were you academic or?
I was more academic. I don't know. I like playing sports, but I wasn't good at it. I love playing soccer. That has been the sport through my whole life. Soccer. Then in high school, I played lacrosse because it was the only contact sport we had. I discovered I love contact.
Yeah.
Then I played rugby a little bit after, injured myself, then got into jiu-jitsu, and I've been in and out jiu-jitsu and different martial art things since.
Oh, right on. You currently practice jiu-jitsu? Workout?
No, I had shoulder surgery because of the rugby injury. I'm still waiting to be out of the window to start being able to train jiu-jitsu again.
Right on. Yeah. Rotator cuff?
Torn labrum.
Okay.
Close.
Yeah.
Same recovery. Still not fun.
Yeah. That's a long healer.
Yeah. It's a real long healer.
Yeah.
So getting that back, but sports, I mean, that was part of my life because I always played soccer, but I was half decent in academics. I played the violin. I played the violin through my whole life, on and off. And those three were how I spent the bulk of my time.
That's a tough instrument, man. That's an instrument that does not do well when you're learning. It just doesn't sound good.
Oh no, there's when I think of the early days, I literally think of myself crying. There was a lot of pain at the beginning, and just people saying, I'm like, how is anyone encouraging me to do this? This sounds god awful. And I guess someone said, yeah, it sounds bad, but it sounds bad in the right way.
Okay. Right on. Yeah. You have to have some amount, you have to have some, persistence, right? Some discipline, some determination to be good, I think, at the violin. Because it is, it is, I grew up around some amount of musicians, and that one instrument is the one where it's like, man, just stop playing because it sounds like someone's dying, right? Yeah. It's different if it's the drums or the guitar or the piano. It may not sound good, but it doesn't sound like death, right? The violin sounds like a horror movie. It's horrible. And yeah. So to be good at it and to do it, I'm sure you're excellent at it now if you've been doing it for your life. And it's a beautiful instrument when it's done well. My grandfather was a concert violinist and played in the Buffalo Philharmonic and was outstanding, just unbelievable, violinist. And it's a beautiful instrument when it's played well, but man, it takes serious work to get there. And he would, even late in his life, if he came to see us on vacation, he would practice, fingering the violin. He would bring his violin. He would do his daily kind of workouts and exercises to stay, good at it.
You have to.
Yeah.
I've played around with the guitar. I play around the piano, but the violin has an ability to express in a way that other non-violoncellos, like that family, all those instruments have a way to express that other instruments just can't. From being able to be microtonal to really slide, to really duplicate the human voice. Nothing, because it doesn't have any of those ridges, which is what makes them hard. Those frets or those separations, like the piano, it doesn't have set notes. You decide what note you want, and that gives you so much room for expression. But it takes skill to bring that expression out.
Yeah. Do you play now to relax, or do you play it still, or?
Yeah, I actually started picking it up even more in force in the past few weeks, past few months by now. And it's a mix of wanting to play songs I've always wanted to play, and also, when I play it for fun, I like to try to put violin pieces to songs that either didn't have them, or I think it'd be hilarious if they did. And so I find something that got me. I'm classically trained. That's what I play. I played Bach through most of my life, but I love finding metal covers of songs, or like adding a violin piece to a metal song, or like Celtic punk. I really love. I love throwing that stuff in there.
Yes, I love that. I love when you, like, if you're ever in a place where they're playing music and you go, wait a minute, that's a Metallica song, or something. You're like, it's so awesome when you hear that being played in a totally different way,
Exactly.
I get what you're saying there. Yeah. I was curious if you used music. If I think about, for me, like running is very, I can get very heady when I run. I get very relaxed when I run. Shooting a bow, I like to shoot a bow. I shoot, and that is because it's very process oriented. You drop into the steps of shooting a bow, and it's very relaxing because your brain sort of filters everything else out. Same thing with just kind of shooting. If I go to the gun range, shoot a gun, it's very calming because you're just so focused on what you're doing. Everything else gets removed. And do you have that experience with music or anything else?
I have that most with music. With music, they're all different. So music is like a creative openness in that way for me. Running and swimming can be that way for me. I actually hated running until I decided to try to engage it as more of a meditative journey, where I just wanted to find a tempo that I could be at and kind of like get locked in like that happy zone too.
Yeah.
Where I'm just off and I'm still there, and just go for 5 miles or something, or just stare at the bottom of the pool.
Yes.
And I just get locked in that tempo. And so I get that resonates. And then I also would say with jiu-jitsu, if there was a time, because I only have here, I have someone trying to choke me. Nothing else really matters right now in life. And dancing, I think, is a similar way. I love dancing, something, whether it's salsa dancing or Greek dancing I had to learn growing up, which I still enjoy. All of those things, in soccer too, team sports and rugby fit this, of things that put me in my body, that allow me to be in communication with someone, whether that's with others playing team sports, or whether that's maybe with myself running, and that force me to be in this moment, are things I tend to really enjoy, of which all those things I think are.
Right on. Love it. All right. So let's talk about your teenage years, 15 years old, 9/11 happens. What's your memory there of that moment?
So it was a school day. I was at high school, and in true Catholic form, they told us things without telling us anything. We had some sort of a school meeting where all of us left more confused than we came in. So, smartphones didn't exist back then.
Right.
So none of us had a way to get information by ourselves. And the teachers were crying. We couldn't figure out why. We were just all really confused. And then they said planes have hit buildings in New York is what they said in the school meeting. We all thought there was like a Cessna that went off path. Of course, by the end of the day, we've all finagled our ways to get into the computer lab, get online, we see what's happened. And we're still wrapping our heads around it and trying to figure out. We go home, and that's when it really hits me what happened. Like I realized, oh, well, there was something trains. It seems these planes hit, but I still didn't even know at school that it was an attack. It just seemed a really bad accident. And then when I got home and I just saw in the news, the gravity of it came in, and I just remember sitting in front of the TV for hours, not moving, not really doing much. And I just remember watching the buildings fall over and over and over again. I remember watching people jump to their death over and over and over again. I remember listening to the first responders going in, listening to the radios cutting out, the dispatchers trying to still raise them, can't get them raised. And I just did this for hours. My mom claims that I at one point went into our backyard with my BB gun and sat in the woods to like guard the house or something. I don't have a clear memory of this. But I don't see why she would lie about that. But what I mainly remember is sitting in front of the TV and hitting a place where my brain just started to tune out everything. And I started to hear the Moonlight Sonata by Beethoven. Do you know that song?
Not offhand.
It's a very slow,
yes,
mellow, somber song. And that started playing in my head. And why, I don't know, but that is seared into my brain. And every time I hear that song, I go back to 9/11 and thinking about it. And it's a beautiful song. It's one of my favorites. But I had this like arc of intensity watching everything, hitting this point where my brain's, I think, trying to help me regulate. Then I just got really, really curious. I got really obsessively curious about the question, what would make someone wake up and kill thousands of people they never met? And how could we have stopped that decision in advance? And that question defined the rest of the course of my life.
That's a lot for a 15-year-old, right? So you sorted through that, you went through that, you're playing that music in your own mind, and you come to that question at the end of that day, right? So what's interesting to me is, people's experiences with 9/11. I've interviewed many people that talk about, well, I was really young or that I was older, but that 15-year-old, that kind of middle where your brain's still massively in formation stage, right? The adult brain, I don't know, especially male adult brain, I think still developing till mid-20s or something.
Right.
And so you're really kind of a miniature adult. I mean, you've got the ability to think about, like you did, what would cause somebody to do this? How do we back this record up so that we get to the beginning and figure out how to stop it before it happens? That's a very adult concept or thinking pattern, right? And I think it's, when you think about, again, the age that you were when this happened, you were kind of right in that place where you could do that, but still very young.
Yeah.
It's just really, and so what was your take on that then? What was your conclusion?
I became really curious about how people become terrorists. I didn't have a conclusion. It was a question. And my whole life leading up to this, I was always interested in the natural sciences. So things like physics, chemistry, primarily. And after this, that was a hard switch to people. Why do people do what they do? Why do we make the decisions we make? And I still view myself as on that path, even though I'm not in counter-terror work right now. The work I'm doing with people was driven by the question, why do we do what we do? And can we change what we do? Because as a coach, I focus on behavioral change. I like working with people who say, I want to do X, but I'm constantly doing Y. Why can't I do X? And so that gets me excited. But I came out with questions, and I became really fascinated in understanding history, geopolitics, anything around terrorist organizations and groups. And I just kept breathing and learning and going down that road.
So did you decide in that moment, like, okay, I'm going to go to school so that I can go become, like, what was your path or plan at that point? It doesn't sound like you were thinking, I'm going to go get in the military and go fight. It was like, how do I find these terrorists, or what was your thinking there?
I don't know is the honest answer. I can give you answers. I can give you the answer of something in me knew or strongly felt this isn't a military. Joining the military wasn't going to solve this.
Wasn't the way, yeah. Because
it's not a nation attacking us. So, and that's the only way I knew to think about anything in the military. And I still have that opinion. The military has never been a solution to terrorism, ever. So I guess I found myself in a position where I more was trying to figure out who can give me the most information on this. And I considered psychology as a major for a while when I was thinking about school, but then either arrogance or ego or genius of saying, I don't want to learn other people's theories. I just want to know, why do people choose to commit violence? That's what I want to know. Because I think if all the psychologists and all of the therapists knew, this wouldn't have happened. We would solve this. So I want to go. I want to just learn about the root thing I'm interested in. So that put me into majoring in international relations with a terrorism focus. That put me into studying different languages. That put me into studying Arabic for a while. That may put me into, for my anthropology class in college, doing an ethnography where I actually went to a mosque for a semester, and I joined them in prayer for Friday because I wanted to see what was this like. And that was an experience, my God, of an arc of having to deal with my own prejudice at the beginning, of being completely surprised at how these people engaged with me, being surprised with what I saw inside, and being really, really grateful that I had the opportunity to do that. And I had a class that asked me to be curious about a group of people who I don't know anything about. I'm so grateful for my anthropology class. I'm so grateful for it. That was such an interesting experience, and one that has changed how I view the world.
Man, that's awesome. So as you're getting your degrees, are you thinking, you're starting to shape, like, this is how I'm going to go now and into the world?
Yeah, I pretty much assumed I was joining the intelligence community. I didn't know exactly how. That was what everything was being built around. But on the way there, I had this intense breakdown. And so I guess before we put the cart before the horse, all my undergrad was focused on building a good basis to apply to join the intelligence community, all the alphabet agencies. And then I had an internship at the office that you named previously, Office of Emergency Management, Homeland Security. They just offered me a job at the end of my internship. So I kind of fell into that. And the plan was to use that as a stepping stone to then go federal after that. And it was at that job was when I had the breakdown. And there was such a shift in seeing myself in the world and issues itself that I felt like I became concerned that if I join the intelligence community, I will be playing a game instead of changing a game. I might be able to move the ball 20 yards down the field, but I don't want that to be my legacy. I don't want that to be what I do. I don't want to just play a game where we do some stuff, they do some stuff, and this just repeats over time. I want to do something that actually causes this to change and be prevented. And I'm only saying most because I want to be correct, but I'm not aware of anything really preventive that's happening. I mean, I know Civil Affairs does some stuff, but does that work? USAID does some stuff. That's probably half decent, but I don't know. Nothing felt like strong enough prevention. And maybe I was more interested at the psychological level. So I once I had that breakdown, post-traumatic growth, whatever you want to call it, I no longer felt that the intelligence community was going to deliver me to what I was interested in. And that's when I became really interested in working with people and their emotions. And just to finish this, I know I've been talking for a while. Part of this came when I was on a SWAT call. And, so I deployed in support of Pittsburgh SWAT. We helped them with logistics and communications and planning and stuff like that. We operated the command post. They worked out of all that fun stuff and housed the negotiators. And we're in hour whatever of this call, and it was a hostage situation, and which was a domestic, a guy holding his girlfriend and his daughter hostage. And I remember talking to the negotiators, and they said, well, we finally got him to release his girlfriend and his daughter because we were able to finally get his mom to call him. And as I continued talking, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. Oh, the only reason I'm here is because this guy doesn't know how to deal with his feelings. It's the only reason I'm here. Doesn't have anything to do about good and evil, good guys, bad guys. I'm here because this guy doesn't know how to deal with his feelings. And I had that experience over and over again to the point where that's what I wanted to focus on.
So on that particular example, when his mom contacted him, it de-escalated everything and
yeah, I mean, his girlfriend and his daughter came out. I handed her water as she was on her way to get checked out by the medics, but I saw the stare. I saw that 1,000-yard stare. She was looking through me and through the truck and everything behind me. And I just felt a chill. I just felt a chill down the back of my spine. And I said, this isn't right. I don't want this to happen. We have to prevent this from happening.
And his mom was able to talk him down, or basically say, let him out type of thing?
Yeah. His mom talked him down. And then an hour later, he surrendered, which was great. That's what we want.
Yeah. Man, it's interesting. It's because I'm sitting here just trying to picture that. So you went on call after call after call of that type of thing, right? Of hostage situations and just, so your cortisol, all that stuff's just getting jacked. I'm trying to lead up to you talk about having this breakdown, and it was an output of the stress and is that what you're thinking? Or?
Honestly, the work was the best part. I am one of those people who find stress relaxing because that's my comfy chair.
Pardon the interruption, everyone. Do you ever feel like you're out of alignment with your true gifts, your passion, and your purpose for being on this earth? Do you feel like you're grinding it out each week with the appearance of success and still asking, is this it? If so, I get it. I've been right where you're at. And once I figured it out for myself, it's why I started coaching. Now I help my clients get back into alignment with their authentic self. I help them find meaning, purpose, joy, and energy in each day. Check out my website at ericsardina.com to learn more and to schedule a free 15-minute strategy session. And now, back to the show.
If something's in chaos, I'm so used to high intensity, high energy, or high pressure, whatever it is, whether that's from my childhood and background, whether that's from my genetics, whether that's from the work I did or what I was interested in, I find a very comfy chair in that type of environment. So I'm someone who I will have a harder time typically, not so much now, but back then, putting me on a beach with a cold drink is so much harder than putting me in the middle of a SWAT call. I know what to do in a SWAT call. I feel relaxed in a SWAT call. I know how to operate, or deploying to the emergency operations center, EOC, or doing whatever. That's comfortable. So actually, work was stressful because we weren't getting a lot of calls. That was the biggest stressor at the time of the breakdown. I was working full time on full time call out 24/7, 365, where I had always had my phone with me that I had to run at a moment's notice. I was also going to grad school full time at night because that's what winners do. You don't do it part time, you do it full time and you get it done. So I'd work from 9 to 5 and that'd be run home, change, fight traffic, be in the seat in my class from 6 to 9 at night, 4 days a week. And then weekends were spent hooking up, getting hammered, burning steam, doing homework. And it was a very high intense lifestyle, but the key part of this all was I motivated myself through all of this through self-criticism. And if you do that, there's a long-term cost because you're pulling money out of an account without ever putting anything back in. If I feel like I'm inherently not enough, but doing this will make me enough, that gives me a lot of energy. I mean, what could possibly give me more fuel? So it's a great short-term motivator. But if I do that every day for 10 years, at some point you're writing a check you can't cash, or you
empty the bank account for sure.
There's nothing there. And I found myself in a situation where I had all these things to do, all of this pressure. I was hitting the quarter life crisis that my generation has invented of what am I doing? Is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Is this actually working? Am I on the road I want to be on? And working full time, grad school full time, doing my partying, whatever. I was getting sick. I was getting infections, and I had zero interest in spiritual strength. My physical health was shot because of how I was living, eating fast food all the time because that's my schedule demanded it. Not working out, not doing any of that stuff. It all rested in my emotions. We just went into this. My emotional health was me criticizing myself. That didn't help. It all rested on my brain, on mental health, and that just snapped at some point.
So when you had this breakdown, how did it manifest?
I wanted to, it overtly manifested in being suicidal. My personal experience of this was wanting just 5 minutes break from the voice in my head telling me I was awful. That was what I wanted. Or that was a bitch. I'm stupid. I'm an idiot. I'm a fucking pussy. I'm whatever. Like whatever language I used to criticize myself, it was just so loud. And it was doing this because it was trained to do this. I trained myself that if I see myself in a dire situation, I should put even more pressure on myself because that generates more fear, which then generates more action. So this was doing the job it knew how to do to motivate me. It was being hyper critical because it saw me in a position of needing to get really lifted up. I just didn't have the energy to really lift up. So I just wanted a break. And the actual breakdown, if you want to call it that, was I was taking a shower while getting ready to go to work it was December 31st, 2010. I was getting ready to go to work for first night because we ran security for the New Year's celebrations in Pittsburgh. And I collapsed while coming out of the shower. And I was crying, and my roommate came in, who is my best friend and still is, and just sat with me. And that was the first time I admitted to someone through tears, I want to die. And I was actively suicidal for the next few weeks. But because of my job, I was afraid of getting therapy because I didn't want to get a diagnosis. There were certain jobs I was looking at that I couldn't have any sort of a record, specifically if I wanted to go into the military, which I was considering applying to join this to be a civil affairs officer. And So I saw therapy was presented to me as a threat, but I knew I needed help. I couldn't do this alone. I went to a friend, a mentor of mine, who was an Irish Catholic priest. And even though I wasn't religious and he knew that, we were friends, and he was kind of a mentor to me. And I just said, "Hey, Nace, I need some guidance. Can you tell me who to talk to?" I wanted him to tell me someone to go to. I didn't want to talk to him, but he said, "Come talk to me." And he said, "Can you make it till January something?" I forget what the day was. And I said, "Yeah." And I sat down at his office, and he just said, "I want you to tell me every reason you hate yourself." And I went on for an hour and a half, and I just all of it came out. And it felt like, I remember distinctly the feeling of feeling like hot irons were being repeatedly put into my chest. And I was sobbing. I had this like just snot and blowing into tissues. And he didn't say anything. He just kept asking questions. What about this? What about this? What about this? What about this? Just very relaxed, quiet, leaning back. And then after an hour and a half, I was drained. I was exhausted. I remember sitting in a chair, looking at the wad of tissues in my hand. And then I thought, what the fuck did you just do? Like, this is a relationship you care about. And you just told this guy things you've never told another person, things you forgot about, things you hide from yourself. And I looked at him, and he looked at me, and he said, "Is that everything?" I said, "Yeah." And then this smile flashed across his face, jumped out of his chair, came over to me. I got up too. He gave me a huge hug, and he just said, "I love you." And I just broke down all over again. And that moment changed and saved my life. Not that he saved my life, but I realized in that moment, he gave me a model of something I never experienced before, which was to come face to face with the worst I could see in myself and still choose to love. And that was such a wild experience that I'd never felt before, that I became all curious about that. If he can do this, how can I do that? What does it look like to have a relationship with yourself based on this? What's it look like to see you're bad, and instead of using that to fuel self-hatred or change, how can you see that and find peace? And I became so curious about that. And that has defined the last decade of my life, decade plus now. Yeah.
And that's awesome. I'm curious. There's so many questions kind of come up for me here. So you're sharing all this stuff, and as you're sharing it, is it revealing itself to be, there's some percentage of it, is it revealing itself to be nonsense, or is it revealing itself to be like, oh man, that's something that I never thought I would tell somebody? So, again, not that you need to share it all here.
What do you mean nonsense?
So is it like, oh, I'm just a piece of crap because I don't take the garbage out regularly?
Oh no, man, this is stuff that this is,
I don't
deep
make
shame.
that up, but I mean, is it something that when you hear it, you think, well, that's really not bad? Or is it like, man, I robbed this bank one time, and you're like, that's legit, like that's a bad thing, and yet I've been carrying it and I need to forgive myself. When you were hearing it, I'm just curious, was there a percentage of, or as it was coming out, did it sort of lose its power? Like that, I've been holding that.
I see what you're asking
nonsense.
Now. Okay. Yes, yes and no. The yes part of it is, okay, we're talking about shame.
Yeah.
And there is a true saying that goes around saying the shame that can be named is the shame that can be tamed. And that's true. Shame grows in the shadows. We want to bring it to the light, which is what I think you're asking about. So bringing light to it, naming it, I do recall feeling, yeah, this might sound dumb, but blah, 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 blah. And so that right there is me noting something here is maybe not. But at the same time, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if that leads me emotionally to a point of seeing myself as undeserving of love or acceptance or belonging. it doesn't matter how someone else would view it themselves. It's what's my subjective experience. For some part of me, this experience, this happening to me doing this, me failing to live up to a certain standard was justification somehow, some way for me to reject myself. So yes and no. Yes, shining a light on it did allow it to be tameable. I mean, this snapped me out of being in a suicidal state. Which is not like I revisited that state. That's not to say this was a one and done thing, but it was very powerful. So the light thing was there, but I also had to come to terms with I've repeatedly failed to be the person that some part of me wants me to be. And that still felt hard to sit with, which I think it feels for anyone. Shame it's what all of my work focuses around. And I think it's the most painful emotion we can feel as humans.
Yeah. And I agree. And I have experienced that myself. And I have many clients that, the expression that I hear people use almost the same words each time, which is, and this almost done in a way that they claim it as it's been a motivator or a driver, which is I'm my own worst critic. People will say that I'm my own worst critic. I'm really hard on myself. And I ask, is that helpful? Is it helping you? Oh, I think it is. It's driving me. It's like, well, maybe it's, or flip that around and say, what could you have been if you were your biggest cheerleader? Like, would you say the things that you say to yourself? Would you say it to your kids? And they say, no, I would never do that. Why not? Well, it would destroy them. Well, then why is it helping you to say that stuff to yourself? Why do you think it's motivating and making you who you are? Maybe it's the thing that's actually holding you back. And it's sort of that light bulb a bit can go on. Like, I never really thought of that, but it's very universal that people will say, I'm my own worst critic. I'm very hard on myself. I drive myself to a high level and I'm very hard on myself. And it's like, where does that come from? Why is it so prevalent?
I think because it works. If I wasn't suicidal, I'd probably still be doing it. I mean, I got to this point because I took it to an extreme and I could not follow what I couldn't live up to what I was trying to do just because I spread myself too thin. If I didn't do that, I bet I would be one of those people saying the same thing because I would be showing you proof it works. Why would I stop? The analogy I use is marathon runners. When you see a runner, is he punching himself in the head to stay motivated and stay running? No. Why? We can even put aside all of the statements around, well, that wouldn't be nice to himself. That would be mean. It's a waste of energy.
Mm-hmm.
Why waste energy? Why waste energy fighting yourself when you could apply it towards what you want to do? And that I find to be a useful way to think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I use an analogy, a sports analogy around, there's a reason that the home team wins like 70% of the games. It's because they got 80,000 people telling them they're awesome. And the other team's getting 80,000 people telling them that they suck. Right. So if you're constantly in your head saying you suck, you might win some, but wouldn't it be better if you were telling yourself you were awesome? I mean,
it's a brilliant analogy. That's a really smart one.
And yet often, again, it just seems very consistent, and myself included, that I've driven myself over the years of saying, if you don't do this, you suck. And so I will do it come hell or high water. But wouldn't it be better to maybe take the opposite approach, right? And say, you can do it because you know you can, because you're built to do it, or something other positive. All right. So after this moment with the priest, then what path do you start down? What changes? What happens there?
I become really curious about what does it mean to. So again, being curious about a question, my question became, if he could see me this way, why can't I? And what would it be like to do so? And I became really almost obsessed with this question. Just so curious about it. And I went down this road where it felt almost like relearning how to walk, because I had to relearn how to identify a goal, pursue a goal, achieve a goal. And what I actually started to do was I became really aware of how I made decisions. So instead of thinking, what habits should I do? What would be a better way of whatever in my life? I became really interested in going a step back even from that and saying, how am I choosing how to spend the next 15 minutes? How am I choosing to spend something else? And this was really hard for me, exceptionally hard. I knew I was really, really good at tearing myself apart. And for maybe 3 or 4 weeks, I kept trying to find like a new mental model of how can I think, and I kept floundering. I was really floundering. And I went to visit a friend in DC. I was driving back from her place. I was on my way back to Pittsburgh. And now we're at the era of having an iPod, and it was on shuffle. And this song came on called Dandelions by Five Iron Frenzy, which was a song I listened to from my ska and punk days in high school. And it just popped out of nowhere. But it has this line where it's a song about a boy bringing flowers to his mom, but they're all dandelions. And it has a line, she sees flowers where everyone else sees weeds.
Mm.
And something about that hit where I was taken to this image of a mother holding a newborn child. And seeing this image and kind of floating around it like a ghost, where this child has done nothing, but it's receiving all of this love from the mother. And I can like see the mother. It's not a mother I knew. It wasn't mine. It was just an archetype of a mother. I could see this child, this young boy, and I could almost see or feel this beam of energy connecting them. And I became really curious about this. So I, like being a ghost, I kind of like floated. I can't remember which one was first. I floated into, I think maybe the child of what's it like to be a child and receive love for having done nothing, for having achieved nothing but living. And I felt that for a moment. And then I switched and I went to the mother's body and I felt, what's it like to offer something love for no reason other than it exists? And then I kind of like floated into the beam connecting the two of this just raw energy. What's this feel like? And this is all happening while I'm going 75 miles an hour down the highway. But it was so intense and quick. This happened in a series of seconds, but it felt like I had so much time in it of just being in this space and having this embodied sensation of all three now. And I just burst into tears and burst into gratitude. And there was some awareness again of like I just learned something here. And when I got home and I unpacked this and I sat with it, I started to realize, what if I could connect with this mother, if I could imagine there's a place inside me that feels the way she feels towards me, of something that it has no agenda for me. It doesn't need me to be someone. It just wants me to be happy and to be fulfilled. Whatever word you want to use. What advice would this person give me on how to spend my next 15 minutes? And so I kind of energetically connected with this mother in my vision. I would just ask, what's your take? And I would hear over time, I developed hearing an answer. I would ask, I would listen for an answer. And it was always tailored. It was always, one day it might be, you should really do your laundry. You have a big pile. Or cooking would be good. Or your homework could be taken care of. Or you should rest. Just lie down on the floor. And it was more, it gave me a way of actually, I see now coming into being aware of my needs, because that was something I completely ignored before. And as I did that more and more, I just started to naturally adapt different habits and things into my life. I started to wake up, like I told you before, I used to hate running. Then I started waking up 6 a.m. to go on 5Ks just because I felt that just felt good.
Yep.
Why not? And that's all the thought that went into it. I didn't make a plan, watch some video that inspired me, think about self-discipline. None of that existed. This seems like this feels good. I should do this. And it started me on that road. So that having her as a model gave me a way to like think through it. And I still use that with clients of, is there if I first ask him, think of someone who you deeply love and you just want the best for. And for some reason, nieces and nephews are the most popular answer I get. And it's like, just think about how you love them and imagine, just take the people out of this now, attach to that feeling. And if something felt this way towards you, whether it's a higher version of yourself, a different version of yourself, or someone else, like in my vision or whatever, what advice might they give you? And can you learn to listen for that and decide whether or not you want to experiment with following it? That seems to be something that's helpful for everyone.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, for me, again, when I hear what you're describing there, that's a God it's a relationship of God. You said you felt love even though you didn't deserve it, right? Mm-hmm. And that is God incarnate. That's God walking among us, right? I love you, you don't deserve it, and I love you anyway.
Yeah, and that was the spiritual part of this was here too. And the priest asked me at the end of our thing, are you finally willing to explore the spiritual side of yourself? And I said, yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, I'm not a big fan of organized religion. He said, I'm not asking you to be. But would you be willing to have a conversation? And I said, what do you mean? He said, I'm just going to tell you that. Would you be willing to have a conversation? And I said, fine, fuck it. Why not? And I got into this habit at night of my prayer, if you want to call it that, was, all right, I don't think anyone's listening, but in case someone is, here's what's up. And it gave me room to just admit to everything that was feeling, everything happening for me right now. And I sat with that, and I was still meeting with Nace, and I told him what I was doing. I said, but I don't really feel like I'm having a conversation. He just kept repeating the same thing. Just have a conversation. That's all. Just have a conversation. And so again, curiosity gets the best of me. And I'm like, you know who are the best conversationalists are really good listeners. And so I got into this arc of, I would say everything I needed to say, then I would listen and like actively listen to the silence inside me, the deepest place of silence I could find within me. And I had some insane experiences, to the point of saying, I had an experience where after it, I'm like, I think that's the closest I'm going to ever come to seeing what we call God. And I'm still not a fan of organized religion. I'm still someone who, no, I'll just leave it at that. I'm still not a fan of organized religion because I'm very aware, especially in the work I do, of the shame and the pain it can cause, of the way humans hurt other humans through religion. But I am a spiritual person. I know there's a deep spiritual truth. I work in that. I don't claim to know what it is, but I'm grateful it exists because I have a feeling it's the reason why I do and why we all do too.
Yeah, man, I appreciate that, and I love it. I mean, because again, it's being open to that there's things out there that you don't understand, things bigger than you, bigger than us, and being open to how those, how I would call God can work in our life, right? And just having that door open. That's all. I think that's all for me. Again, that's what God's looking for. He's just looking for an openness to say, "Let me in." I want to have a relationship. Yeah. I want to be involved. And when we do that, when we open that door, and we crack that door, incredible things happen, I believe. So that's awesome. All right, so you've had this moment, this kind of breakthrough, or this change. This big thing has happened. And yet you can't just snap your fingers and be a different human. So you got to go to work again on Monday, I would presume, or someday. But the trajectory maybe has changed, and now your thought has changed of what's going to happen forward. So where does it take you?
Work became a lot easier. I had a really combative boss. Part of the reason why we didn't have much to do is because he successfully managed to piss off the entire SWAT team. And so we weren't invited to come out and play anymore. For the last few months. And even when he'd yell at us, he'd throw things. I have a lot of compassion for him. He was a very difficult person to work under. His heart was in the right place. He had a lot of his own issues. But I found it all a lot easier to deal with. I felt like I was kind of surfing through this time. I was very in the moment, very Zen-like in many ways. And But part of that came too with seeing the response, the pattern, the way that the United States, but really the current world order deals with terrorism or violence doesn't succeed, in my mind, really that much of prevention. It's more the bad guys move first, then we respond. And I want that because I want to live in a response world. I don't want to live in a world where the police have the right to show up to my door first and claim to know I'm about to do something. I want that. But with that being said, there's a lot more money in bullets than there is in healing. And that makes me sad. And but it also I just lost my appetite for that work. And that's when I became really, and I was still, from the experiences I was still having, the research I was still doing, I still was around violence and everything, but I became really curious about why do so many men behave in ways that end up destroying their own lives as well through violence and through the application of force. And it all kept coming back over and over again to feelings and emotions. And as I became more curious about my own feelings and emotions, my own shame, my own pain, how I respond to them, I just lost my appetite or patience. And there was red tape. There was some politics that made me want to leave government work too. But the bottom line was I hit a point where I said, I'm no longer a service here. That was what it hit. Oh. And I floundered around for another year or two because I really didn't see myself getting into this line of work. I kind of avoided it. Mm-hmm. And then I met someone she's still my partner. She was a counselor turned coach. And she said, I really think you should consider this. And that's what got me into coaching.
So you go down the path of becoming a coach then? Was that your, so you're for a year or two, what were you doing kind of to pay bills? You just kind of like,
I had money, so I paid bills from saving. I did a little bit of traveling. I've been trying to invent, I was working towards inventing a fire alarm for autistic people. And then I ran into some issues there and shot myself primarily because of my own emotional reasons. It's still a project I want to work on. I bounced between, I went to community college for a while, thinking about becoming an engineer. I just bounced around really without much order. And I kind of fell into the coaching, but I was such a natural fit. And I didn't have a great desire to go to become a therapist for a few reasons. I at this point, since leaving, I did end up going to therapy as a client a couple of times. And I honestly had mixed, sometimes really negative experiences. And I didn't like how they were talking about things. I don't like the medical model without rules therapy and mental health. I don't like looking at thinking about something as mental illness. Mm-hmm. And there was some of the people I knew, not saying all therapists are like this. I love therapists. They play a huge role in my life. Most of my colleagues now are therapists. All that being said, my partner was previously a therapist. The therapists who I had the fortune, for better or worse, to be around were ones who said, this is a chemical imbalance. This is just something that's wrong with your brain. You need medication. You need to learn how to cope. And I was like, fuck that noise. I'm not doing that. And I sure as shit didn't crawl out from being suicidal by following that advice. I'm in a much better place without doing that. I don't want to go down this same road. I want something different. And coaching provided a way to get to the front lines as soon as possible with something that we know works well enough to work, but still leaves a lot of room for exploration and discovery. And so I entered coaching with the attitude I have from my emergency work of, we don't give a shit about any theory. Theory matters nothing. All that matters is what works. Yep. And let's test it. Let's experiment. Let's constantly, it's like prototyping. Did this work? All right. Because in an emergency, you always break it down to periods of time. Okay. In the next 6 hours, we're going to try to achieve that. So then 6 hours later, you say, did this work? What do we need to do? How do we need to pivot? And I applied that mindset to coaching with my clients. All right, what's happening? Where are we at this week? This worked, this didn't. All right, let's try this. Let's try this. And it fit much more my personality instead of giving me a commandment of this is how you must treat everyone for better or worse. So that's how I fell into, and I was young and naive and thought I knew a lot. And that's how I got into coaching. But I've been in it since.
And so you coach one-on-one, you coach in groups. Is it men, women, everything? What do you do? Primarily men.
Probably if you looked at my stats through the entirety of my career, I think it's like probably 90% men. Then my longest client is female. So take that for what you will. I've always been passionate about working with men. I've always felt men were underserved. I ran the only secular men's group in Pittsburgh for a period of time. And I was all focused on emotional skill training. So it was things like meditation, things like learning how to communicate your feelings, how to identify your feelings, how to communicate with each other in this space. And I do work as a facilitator for a men's group called Every Man Now, where they do similar things of, can we normalize men sharing feelings in a space that is masculine? And I can get on a big soapbox about this, of how I'm so tired of everything being engendered, of feelings being engendered, that there's that, to love is feminine. Why? I experienced intense masculine love many times in my life. I have a decent relationship with my dad. What do you call what happened with Nace? Like the other men who I've worked with, come on, there absolutely is love that's masculine. We don't have to put this to everything. And so I'm very passionate about creating a space where it's normalized for men to express, receive, be emotional humans, because before we are men, we are human, and all humans are emotional. So I view men's work as a place to honor that part of being a man, which is being an emotional human, and normalizing that, because that is what men, especially since the 1950s, have lost in the US. And so we're fixing that. Giving men emotional skills, letting them communicate, letting them help improve their relationship with themselves, because then that improves every other relationship in their life too. And that's what I love. I love bringing men closer to their partners, to their communities, to their visions, to their whatever they're passionate about, whatever lets them connect with others in the world. I love that. But so I do that group work, and the rest of it's one-on-one, and it's all focused on shame, self-criticism, your relationship with yourself. What do you want to do? Why do you want to do it? Is this coming from a place of love or fear for yourself? Where do we want to go?
Love it. Are there some fundamental things that if a guy comes to you, a client comes to you and it's like, man, I'm having all this feelings of self-loathing, or I feel like crap, I can't get out of bed, I don't want to work, whatever. Are there some basic tenets that you see being helpful to get a guy either stabilized and or moving in a positive direction?
Are you asking me about modalities or methodology?
Yeah, like is there journaling or walks, or is there some things that you go, man, these just work, and I encourage people to do it?
So I would say that I have the two pillars of my work are self-compassion and parts work. And the parts work I do is IFS, internal family systems, which is a trauma modality for engaging with the different parts of yourself. So, excuse me. So self-compassion is something that we can do a lot on our own. It's something Kristen Neff is probably the most she's, it's not a question. She is the world's expert on self-compassion. Her website, selfcompassion.org, I think it has a hyphen in the middle, has thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of peer research reviews, studies on self-compassion and its efficacy. And what I didn't know is that's what I was doing with NACE. I was actually learning how to practice self-compassion myself. Paul Gilbert has a good book out. And as I was reading their books later, I was like, oh, this is everything I've been doing. I didn't know there was an actual whole branch in the psychology and going into the counseling world that knows this too. And it was kind of cool in a way of confirming what I was learning of, if you can learn to treat yourself with compassion instead of criticism, it will improve your life and you'll actually achieve more because you're more emotionally stable. You don't have to spend time pulling yourself out of the hole that you punched yourself into. You just shake it off and keep going. So self-compassion and learning the skills of self-compassion. I'm a big fan of the book Self-Compassion by Kristen Neff. Tara Brach has a really good book, Radical Acceptance. That's really good too. Paul Gilbert's book is good too, but it's really dense. And that's maybe for people more academically minded. But you can do a lot of self-compassion on your own because it's exactly what I described. It's being aware of the way you treat yourself and modifying it. Parts work is a little different. Parts work is you can do a lot on your own. I know people who have succeeded in doing a lot on their own. I'm one of the people, and most of the people I know find it really helpful to work with someone else, whether that's in addition to you doing it on your own or not, but especially to work with someone else first and then learn kind of this is how this works and I can go take it more on my own. I'm a big fan of parts work. And so there's different books about internal family systems, which has been around since the 80s. That was by Dick Schwartz, who is a family therapist who realized that his clients were coming to him talking about different parts of themselves, almost as if they were describing a family inside them. So it's not your family. It's like your mother, your dad. It's more like the different parts and different voices inside you. And can we deal with them? Can we engage with them? Like, so for example, the criticism, I got to know my critic. And I got to ask my critic, why are you treating me this way? And the critic said, because this is what I know works. And I get to say to it, do you like doing this? And it's saying, no, I don't. But I care about you so much that, and I'm so scared that I know this works. And so I'm just going to do what I know. Even though it hurts me to do this, I don't like it. I don't know what else to do. But then I get to ask, who do you think I am? And it's like, well, clearly you're this 8-year-old who has been shamed for blah, 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 blah. I'm like, no, actually that exists. That part of me is here. That feeling's here and I can help it. But before I help it, are you aware I'm here and that I'm actually different than that 8-year-old? And we get to have this really deep, spiritual, emotional, profound experience of engaging with the different parts and aspects of ourselves in a way that nothing else is matched. And that's been my primary work for the past 3 years. And it's the thing that, in my experience, gets clients that last 20% that they've never been able to get with anything else. So self-compassion and parts work are the foundation. I'm a huge fan of meditation, massive fan of meditation, because it teaches us how to not react to every thought or feeling. I'm a big fan of journaling, big fan of art, huge fan of emotional skill training, which I do with almost everyone, learning how to identify your feelings, communicate them. I sprinkle those two, but those two are my big foundations.
Awesome, brother. Appreciate you sharing that. Where can people find you, Jay, and connect with your work or get in touch with you?
My website, jamesjstamatelos.com. I assume it will be in the notes because that's clearly too long of a long, ridiculous Greek name to remember. But it's my name and I like it. And I don't have social media because I've never found a good way to engage with it in a healthy way. So the best way to find me is to contact me through my website, and I'd love to be in touch.
Awesome. Jay, it's been a great conversation, man. I appreciate you sharing so openly your past, your history, everything you're doing. It's fantastic. I love seeing men serving others in this world. It's so needed for men to step into that gap. And I just appreciate what you're doing, brother.
Thank you so much, Eric. Pleasure to be here.
It's been a great talk. To our audience, man, thank you so much for taking time from your day to listen to the show. Always appreciate that. If you would share the program with a friend, write a review, give us a rating, all those things help us reach a broader audience. Until next time, friends, I'm Eric Sardina. You've been listening to the Return to Authenticity podcast, and bye for now.